Happy Tuesday, everyone. Well, technically it's Monday right now, and I just wrapped up an interview with Clint Russell from Liberty Lockdown, and I wanted to change things up a little bit, okay? Because I always feel like I have to take like a stone cold shower after I talk politics. That was the one and only political thing that I'm going to do, so I hope you guys watch it, because that's as much as you're going to get out of me for that. Got Brandon Thomas from Expanding Reality, who's he's got one of the coolest personalities I've ever seen. He's a great interviewer. Wanted to have him on for a little while, and I've got him, and we're going to talk esotericism and spirituality. Okay, so we're going to go deep. So let me add him. Hello, good sir.
My man, good to see you. Thank you for that warm intro. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. So let's just jump right into it, okay? First and foremost, okay, I tell people that you cannot have an enlightenment, like a true spiritual awakening, unless you've gone through hell first.
Yeah.
Okay? I tell people that, okay? And I also tell people that it usually doesn't happen until you have a Saturn return. So have you had a Saturn return, and what is your hell story before we get to the other side?
Oh, man, great. It's an awesome observation as well, because I completely agree. In anything really, the true mark of anybody with character even, which is synonymous with what you're talking about here, they've been through some hell. They've been through some shit. Mine, definitely, I just turned 40, so I'm up for actually 42 here in 2 years. I'm up for a big banger having to do with Saturn again. But yes, my Saturn return, 28, going into 30 there, it was really interesting. That was kind of a shift for me, because I actually jumped into the Matrix. So I had my sort of, I guess, first unplugging. I mean, I've always been out of the box and the black sheep and the family and all that good stuff, but I had my first really good unplugging when I was 18, and right in 2001. And it just barely had to do with the Twin Towers. But that's when my eyes were open to conspiracies, psychedelics, and spirituality all at the same time. And I kind of have viewed the world through those three lenses interchangeably, but you could stack them and all of that good stuff, any tools in the box. But it also came at me just bailing from a toxic situation in my family 2 days after graduation. So I'm like on my own, just had my first psychedelic experience, just got introduced to the unity.
What did you take?
LSD at 18, and 2 hits of liquid acid, one on the tongue directly. And then the guy gave me one on one of those large sweet tarts and said, just save it for later, which I promptly just threw right in my mouth immediately. And so, yeah, I had all that going on, and then I was on my own, man. I moved around. So I've had a lot of, in survival mode and all that good stuff. So I've had a lot of kickabouts with as far as real unconventional lifestyle, let's say. But my Saturn return introduced me to the Matrix. I was settling down. I was ready to get married and all that good stuff. And so I was just like, okay, well, I'll play the game. I did the touring musician thing for 12 years. I took care of my grandmother when she was in her final guitar. So that guitar on the wall right there went to China with me. I toured China for a month and all over the US and all that stuff. And I was in many bands. I just toured with my solo stuff.
I don't know if I ever told you this, but my cousin's the bassist in Fish.
You did not, but that's pretty cool. I have a connection to the Grateful Dead that's pretty interesting, but we'll talk about that off air. I can't talk about it on air, but that's very cool. No, I didn't know that, but tell him I said, what's up? Yeah, I mean, I toured all over. It was awesome. So yeah, with all of that stuff, man, I just kind of said, okay, well, I'm going to just take a break from it for a little while. With, like I said, my grandmother in her last days, because that was it for her. And I came up here and took care of her, and it was like I was 25 years old. It really changed me. It snapped me out of what I thought was a dream, a delusion. And what's funny is now I'm back to myself when I was like 18, when I was 20. I'm still researching the same stuff. I grew my hair back out. I'm back to what I was naturally drawn to at that age. And then I put on a suit for 10 years that was like the normal married mortgage job, drank, all of those kind of things. And since then, I've quit that job. I just absolutely took the leap of faith and am doing what I'm called to do, which is this. And then quit drinking completely. No withdrawal, anything like that. I have no desire whatsoever. I drank steady for like 20 years every single day, and now just nothing whatsoever.
Yep.
So a lot of changes recently. And yeah, I guess, and what's interesting, like I said, about my particular Saturn return was I jumped into the Matrix. I like kind of dove in, you know. I think to kind of win the game, if you want to look at it like it's a competition, first of all, which I don't agree with, and second of all, that it's a game, which I do agree with, then, you have to know how to play it, right? And so I really jumped in. Like I said, bought a home. Like, we have a ranch. We didn't even get like a normal house. We had farm equipment and stuff like that. We have animals. We have all the same responsibilities as somebody who owns a home, but also like 12 acres, you know what I'm saying, with animals and stuff like that. So we really went for it there on the life, and did that about.
I'm not going to ask you to dox yourself, but what state do you live in?
Oh, Texas. Yeah, it's all good. We're living about 45 minutes out of west of Fort Worth. We're in a small little town called Millsap. When we moved out here, it was like population 600 people. It's got to be close to 1,000 now, but it's an unincorporated city. We could do anything we want. It's just really, really freeing. And like I said, we have 12 acres out here. It's like an hour to anything, but we don't mind. We don't miss the delivery food and all that kind of stuff. We welcomed the trade-off, so it's been absolutely worth it. Yeah.
So what exactly? So that's what happened, is you dove into it. Yes. Your Saturn return.
Yeah.
So most people have a breaker on their Saturn return.
Right.
But you went the other way. Now here's my question too. You did acid when you were 18, right?
Yeah.
And you've obviously, we'll get to the path, because everybody's gone through hell, who comes out on the other side and becomes enlightened and all the esotericism and the occult, right? Let me ask you a question regarding psychedelics. Okay. Looking back at your life, okay, do you still do them?
Every now and then, yeah, I'll participate, not super regularly and not heavily. No, not at all, but maybe once a year, something like that.
Do you think it's more beneficial for people to wait to do psychedelics until they've had an awakening? Or did you actually, does it open your mind up when you're 18 years old and you do them? Or what do you think on that? Do you think that people who kind of understand the synchronicities and the mysteries of the world, they benefit from that? Because I know they do, from psychedelics. Whereas when you're 18, your frontal lobe's not formed and you're still trying to figure what you're going to do out. So do you think it's kind of like a wasted experience, or do you think it has value there?
No, it had tremendous value, and it's an awesome question you asked, and it's a real thought out question, man. It's very insightful. It was incredibly valuable, and it was horrible, by the way. It was what you referred to as a bad trip, and I only maybe have had 2 or 3, and that one rings the bell like really hard. And so it was my first introduction to psychedelics, if you don't count marijuana, which I just started smoking. So just real quick, when I was 18 is when I did anything. I grew up in a kind of a small town. Like, we didn't grow up on land, but we grew up in a very small area where, like, I was exposed to nothing, absolutely nothing. It wasn't like I knew about it and then Jesus told me not to, so I didn't. I just didn't know it was there. It was an unknown. So when I moved to Houston, which is when that happened in 18, I got exposed to everything. And that's when I got, that's when I smoked pot for the first time, drank for the first time, acid for the first time, ecstasy for the first time. I used to candy flip a lot. I just take.
When was, what year were you 18 in?
2001.
Okay, so that's when all the Paul Wall and all the crunk shit came out of Houston, right?
Yes. Yeah. And actually, yes. And funny story about, I think it's Paul Wall specifically. I'm actually, because I was a musician, I'm on my acoustic guitar is on one of his tracks, and I never got paid for it. No big deal. But either way, I went over to his producer's house, Mike something. Anyway, real cool guy. And I sat there and I played a few tracks for him, and he loved it. And he put one on a Paul Wall thing specifically, and I never got paid for it. But anyway, yes, but that was the Houston era right there. Yeah, that was when people were sipping on Sir and stuff like that. But I was in like rock bands and things like that.
So the scene must have been just so diverse and bumping.
Oh yeah, and you had a lot of crossover stuff, and that's what was so cool about Houston. As an awakening, it's been one steady awakening for me. I hope that I answered your question from a second ago, but it's been one steady thing. And so even with the music scene and being involved in music, and then being connected to the people that I was, and then because of the kind of music that I wrote and played, it got a lot of attention. I did really well. I shunned a few record labels because I got a really great mentor who's like an old school, really classic guitar player named Mark Deeney down in Houston, jazz guitar guy. Met him through, I worked at Guitar Center for a little while. Met him through there. We just became really good friends. He played on both my albums that I have out. Anyway, so he told me about the industry, and he was like, hey, watch your publishing rights and watch your copyrights, and he told me about the difference, and he really educated me, which is something I'm so grateful for, because I got sat down in front of a couple of contracts that, had I not known that, you and I wouldn't be talking. Things would have been a lot different. I'd be probably a little bitter. But either way, yes. So yeah, that was what it was. And I just, like I said, I was in a ton of bands, and just did my thing. But the mixing of like hip hop culture down there with the rock, and we were doing all sorts of interesting stuff with that, and playing with other bands and festivals that were doing things like that as well. And then of course, Austin and Houston in Texas has South by Southwest, which is one of the biggest music festivals in the world. And I played there 2 years in a row. And that was awesome. You talk about diverse music. I mean, people perhaps have some like shit kicker idea about Texas, and there's some of that, but really it's so diverse. There's so many damn types of people here.
So I have this thought that I like to share with people from time to time. I think that when it comes to musicians and actors specifically, okay, because they're basically told what to do, or basically, I mean, you have your first concept album, right? But then eventually you have to put out a greatest hits. They have to tell it's in the contract. You have to put out a greatest hits, or you have to. When you're not doing it organically and you're doing it for a paycheck, it's a very different thing.
Yes.
And a lot of musicians, especially actors, who are not reading their own lines, I feel like they may have gotten to the top entertainment-wise, or they've made a name for themselves, but they're really not expressing themselves. And I think that's why a lot of musicians and actors gravitate towards politics, because they want to feel like they make a difference as opposed to just a job, in a sense. What are your thoughts on that?
It's an excellent observation again, and I would say to that, it all comes down to authenticity. It's all about who are you, because yes, a lot of musicians' first album is incredible, right? Because they had 10 years to write all that music. That's like 4 albums worth of music they sifted through, maybe 20 albums worth of music, and picked their favorite ones, right? And so it kills. And then you sign to a label. And this is one of the things, thank God, I was warned about and avoided. You sign to a label, and then they say, okay, here's $400,000. You have no say on how it gets invested or spent on your record, but you do owe us this no matter what happens with the record. So you think you're making all this stuff, but you're not. And then you have producers that'll come in at whatever rate, when somebody that could do it more amazingly, or you yourself are an audio engineer and you could go in and do it. And so you're trapped, and then you're forced to make a record real quick, and you're just not used to that plus tour, plus the pressures of payback, plus whatever sort of fame, comes along with that. It's a lot. It's heavy. And if you're not well grounded for yourself, and you don't know your relationship with you, anything is going to be challenging, especially at that level. You may be able to walk the line for a little bit, but man, it's not sustainable. You're burnt out so damn quick. And that's what these one-hit wonders are all about.
And it's like the thing in Rock and Rap Superstar. You remember the song they talk about? There'll be a new you who's younger, who's better looking, who plays similar music, and they'll forget all about you.
Yeah, it's a template. And the more you learn about the business, just probably like anything else, whenever you get starry-eyed about this idea that you could play guitar forever, and you could just make music and make a living, and not only that, make a great living at that, that's a seed that's planted in your mind. And then you go, oh, okay, cool, that sounds amazing. But then the vehicle that you think is going to get you there is so corrupt, and it's so horrible and horrific and shitty, and it's just like it kind of kills a piece of your dreams if you let it. But I think
if you're let alone if you're a female.
Oh God,
because
man, that's girls. I feel for you goddesses. I really feel for you goddesses. I really do. And we love
all
you.
That kind of stuff, yeah. But there are people that come out of the outside, right? That play out their contract. They owe 6 records, they make 6 records, and then they have complete freedom. So there are people that make it out to the other side, and then that's when they'll come out with something, and they'll either change their style, or they'll just be like, it'll be like the first record all over again, because they have, it's a job. People don't realize it's a job.
It's when it doesn't feel like work that it's awesome, but keeping in mind that there's a value exchange attached to what you're doing. And so there's a bit of responsibility inherently in you being paid to do what you love. You know what I mean? As long as you can balance that without squandering it, I think. I mean, like anything, it's a balance, right? And this too, though, is your path, like you said, going through hell. I don't think that ever ends, by the way. I think that it gets less surprising, and I think it gets less intense, but I don't think that you ever stop going through things that feel like hell every now and then. And so this for musicians then on a microcosm would be this. Maybe they've all personally gone through their own, but then also them as a group or them as this entity or egregore that is now this band, right? Then they now have this experience as well, where it's just sort of a teardown. It's just sort of an opportunity. It's the resistance that pops up and says, okay, is this really what you want? Because it's challenging, right? You have to really decide something here and invest your energy into this in a certain way. And if they can make it through that, yes, like you said, man, on the other side, I know Dave Matthews Band, think whatever you want about them as a band, but their story is very interesting about how, same thing with them in a record label, got in for 2 records, got out and really thrived and succeeded in their own, but they needed to
they're
go
my
through
favorite
that.
musicians.
Are they really? Yeah, I've seen them so many times.
Look, they used to open for Fish.
Okay,
and
there
I
you
remember
go.
I lived near Madison Square Garden. I remember being like a kid.
I saw
I remember
Fish.
being a kid and seeing Dave open for Fish.
Yeah, and I used to work at the Woodlands Pavilion when I lived in Houston for just a little while. I mean, I've had so many jobs. If you name a job, I've had it. Right. Except Fluffer, I haven't done that. But the Woodlands Pavilion, he played 2 3-hour sets back-to-back nights, and both were completely different. It was mind-blowing, man. And then his drummer Carter Beaufort, I mean, absolutely one of the best drummers ever.
Yeah.
He has a really cool drum video if you guys want to nerd out on it, called Under the Table and Drumming, because of his Dave Matthews Band album Under the Table and Dreaming. Right. And just awesome, just a really, really cool, if you appreciate music, you'll appreciate that band, because they really do some really interesting things.
Right. Yeah. So let's break this into esotericism and spirituality. So if you think that going through hell is a constant thing, did you have something that really shook you up and woke you up to the reality of the world as opposed to the matrix that they put you in?
Oh God, yeah. And to better answer a question from earlier, I'm realizing I didn't, and to answer this one in the same vein, yes. And psychedelics definitely facilitated that for me. They really helped open my eyes and say, hey, here's an interconnected world. You can choose to look at it or not. Now, personal hells are very interesting. So what I mean by this, and probably what you mean as well, if somebody just wants to look at it, I just have a different perspective on it. That personal hells for you are usually whenever your current observation and feelings and your calibration of your compass, usually dictated by your heart, conflicts with what your paradigm is. And your paradigm is just defined by your beliefs and experiences that you've gotten to over to this point. And I've gotten some awesome little tricks and hacks neurologically. I've been really into NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, where it's just about being mindful of your words and about your speech, and the Emoto studies, and when we look at just the effects on water and speech.
Well, you talk about that the body.
Yes.
When you talk badly about yourself to yourself, even in a joking manner, your body doesn't pick up on that. Your body internalizes it as if it's actual negativity.
Exactly. Yeah, because it's just it's a frequency like a. Just like a hertz, right? Like a frequency, like a single tone frequency in cymatics. It's got a frequency attached to it. Even words, like even if you say it, it's not like a dog. Okay, I think maybe where some people get confused with this, and I'm just now putting this together for the first time, actually. So thank you. Whenever you talk to a dog, with a dog, it's about tone. With what we're talking about now, it's about intent. So let's say that with a dog, you can go, oh, you're such a piece of shit. You are such a piece of shit. And they're going to wag their tail. They're going to love you because they don't understand what you're saying. But the vibe is that you're absolutely pumped to see them. You know what I mean? So it's a similar thing. So back to the other. Yes, psychedelics definitely springboarded me. And I think that they were a wonderful introduction into this. Now, this is facilitated in many, many different ways. And I know spiritual awakenings happen in a variety of different ways, and it has to. If you think about it, I mean, go into any area where 15 people, let's say a school, go into a school where 15 people are being taught something, a math problem. No one is going to get it 100%. Not everyone, by the way, is going to get it 100% of the time the way that the teacher instructs it on the first time. Maybe, but it's a very low average. You're going to have to reword, re-explain, evaluate and give a new perspective to someone to get the same exact answer on the same exact problem. I think we all experience and learn and grow in different ways, right? And so this is why there's such a variety of options of I'd call it nonsense from this perspective now, but but what they are, they're choice points, they're growth opportunities. And this is really how I see it. Even all the shitty stuff, man, it's facilitating the expansion of consciousness at a level. And this is really how I see this. And so if you go through it like this, though, then you say, okay, well, that worked great for me. But to further, I guess, answer your question, I don't think psychedelics are for everyone. Right. I think that you must be at a certain vibrational level. And I know that that's kind of an interesting thing, even cognitively, if you can kind of wrap your mind around it. Right. There's an energetic balance there. Plus, there's sort of a stamina, because with psychedelics, they last for hours and there's no off switch. You know what I mean? So you're in for it.
Are you interacting with your subconscious? Is that what it is in front of you?
It's a great question because, I mean, even at a level, all of it's you, right? If we look at the unity consciousness, everything's you. So it just depends on how far down the Matryoshka dolls you want to phrase the way that we speak about this. So if you look at it like this, like even the UFO phenomena, UFOs and Jacques Vallée, J. Allen Hynek, even Terence McKenna speaking to the UFO phenomena say that they're most likely a psychosemantic thing, which it's very hard for us to wrap our minds around the fact that we're probably projecting these things. They're in our space and they're probably you at a level. And this is why they can interact with you.
Well, you can actually prove that in a way, because 3 people can see different shapes in the sky.
And this is an interesting one. So then the question becomes, because what you're speaking to, and I'm so grateful you brought this up, Micah. What you're speaking about is the subjectivity of the contact phenomena and the phenomenon itself. And yes, we do talk about this. Now, this is also mirrored in the near-death experience, but it's very mirrored. But let's stick with this example because we're on it. There can be 3 people standing there. Not only do they see different shapes, one of them won't see anything at all. 2 will see it. 1 will have their phone out, and you can swipe through filters on Instagram, and then you can find one. It'll show up in one, but it won't be in any of the other ones. For this particular person who can't see it with their eyes, but the other 2 can see it. One describes it as a pyramid. One describes it as a classic saucer shape. But the question is, because then you look at contact reports of people who have been scooped up by these damn things, allegedly. And they say, here's what happened. And they're so different. You'll even get 2 people that get scooped up or have a shared experience that experience different entities. One of them was grays for one of them was reptilians for another. So the question again becomes, are you creating this with your mind, or can they, whatever they is, hijack your subconscious and make them appear or make you experience whatever they feel that they want you to?
Would you say that a great number of people who experience the UFO phenomenon, would you say on let's say 50-50, okay? Let's say, would you say more than 50 or less than 50% of people that experience the UFO phenomenon were not active UFOs, ufologists or anything? These are just people who had no psychedelic experiences in the past. They see some shit in the sky and then suddenly it changes their life. What percentage of people do you think that is? Do you think it's more than, or do you think you have to be preconditioned to think that something could happen and manifest because of it?
Again, an awesome question, man. Because then you look at the fact that people who then have a shared experience, one will call it angels and think that they got scooped up by angels or demons, and the other one says, no, it was little grays, it was aliens, and we were on a physical spaceship. So even the interpretation of the modality of the experience, one views it as an extraterrestrial thing, meaning probably nuts and bolts craft that came from another planet, non-human intelligence is all that. Another viewed it as a spiritual experience, but they may not be disconnected. They may be the exact damn same thing. But again, is it the phenomena that's hijacking your belief system? Because again, there's this thing called screen memories. I've talked to so many people on the show. Pam Nance just comes to mind. When she was young, they appeared as bears or monkeys to her and peeked over her bed and were very, very small and plush. But as she got older, they changed, but they were the same things. And she knew that. Then you have people who again describe this as demons, or then you have people who describe it as poltergeist activity. Who's to say that the people who see something in the sky and the people whose cabinets are getting flung open and the chairs are getting stacked aren't having the same experience and contacting or being contacted by the same energy? That's the real thing.
I talk about this with people with near-death experiences. You're wondering, I talk about how Jesus is the Son, and my work is astrotheology, right?
Right.
I don't think Jesus existed, okay? But there's plenty of people that see Jesus in near-death experiences. Some people see demons. Well, how is that possible?
Yes.
Because entities come to you in either comforting shapes or come to scare you. One of the two. So whatever's in your mind that would scare you, like a gray or a reptilian, or Jesus, a comforting figure. This is why they see their loved ones at the end. Is it them? Maybe, maybe not, but it's their conscious, it's their subconscious projecting friendly images in order to set them at rest.
Yeah, you got it. This also occurs in the psychedelic phenomena as well. If you are doing ayahuasca, you probably have some things that you need to reach a hypersensitive state for, so you can pluck these thorns out from these
Right.
areas where they drop during trauma, and it's going to be harsh, but it's necessarily harsh. You need it to be that. And even the difference between iboga, which is more African, and that's more for addiction, things like that. But it's a very powerful, powerful psychedelic. Same thing, plant medicine versus the ayahuasca, which is referred to as grandmother in the jungles of Peru. So you have two completely different continents, two completely different psychedelics, but one has a masculine energy, the iboga, and it's very harsh. They call it grandfather iboga. And this is what ibogaine, which is a synthetic version of it, is manufactured off of. And it's harsh. It's like your grandpa. I mean, he takes his cane to you. It's rough.
What do you
Grandmother
mean?
ayahuasca is very much more tender. Now it's still very intense and she's going to get to you, but it's a softer embrace. And so there's even anthropomorphized characters within the plant medicines and psychedelics themselves.
Right. Well, when it comes to things like ayahuasca, first of all, they basically, you don't just sign up and say, I'm here for ayahuasca.
Right,
Like you
right,
go through a
right.
cleanse. I don't know if it's 2 weeks or a month, but you have to
Dieta.
prep your body. And the other thing too is people say it changes their lives.
Yes.
But so many people also say that they just spend the whole time throwing up and shitting, but it's still a life-changing experience.
Still valuable. Like my first psychedelic experience, I puked and cried for most of it, and it was still one of the most incredibly transformative experiences I've ever had. Same with my first night in China, most terrified I've ever been. Cried, throwing up, was gonna leave, decided to stay. It was this last minute, it's this whole thing. But through that hell came the amazing awareness and clarity on the other side. And this is where when you go through and you say like what you said about hell and all of that, and I do say that it presents itself. It's not like something you check off the list. It's you checked that energy of hell off the list. And it's not necessarily hell. What it is an opportunity for you to grow. And in growth, it's discomforting. And so it's an invitation for you to reach into your discomfort zone. And it's going to make your comfort zone very uncomfortable until you step out of it and step into your discomfort zone.
Do you think that in order to grow, you need to struggle? I mean, can you grow if
Struggle.
everything's going your way? If everything is fine, can you grow as a person that way?
I don't think so. And I don't think so for the same reason I said the math problem earlier. For some people, maybe. It's a rarer case for that to occur. I think that if that is possible, then perhaps there's some sort of higher awareness there that the lessons don't need to be learned. And basically, they kind of get the pass. They're like, yeah, I've tested out of that grade. Like, I don't need to suffer to enjoy my time here. Maybe, and it again depends on kind of your worldview, what you think this place is and what our role is and what the options are here. And so if you look at this as perhaps some sort of school, some sort of reincarnation thing, then maybe if you're on your last one, you can just coast through and kick through. You know, who cares, right? You've checked out, you've gotten all the merit badges, you've ran through it so many times. But I think I've seen in my own life that the times that I've struggled the most on the other side of that is where all of the great awarenesses, the epiphanies, the growth, the real strong pings and redirection, and always for my highest good. Sometimes at the time it's really hard to see, but I'm to the point now with it because, again, I know it's going to occur again. I kind of look at this as like, if you look at your life, okay, let's say that instead of moving in a linear fashion, we're spiraling, okay, but not only spiraling, we're spiraling and moving forward. So we could picture that as going up, right? Bonacci and you talk about this. So how I picture this is if you look at it from above, it'll look like a fixed point, but think of 4 cardinal directions on either side, okay?
Right.
And at those points, you have the extremes of like depression and then elation and then something in between, right? Like a fall or an spring. And then you have the extremes of those. Now, as you ascend, you get more awareness, you go through those things and you tick these as you go around. But as you ascend through that as well, you're going to hit that point again, but you're more fortified, you are stronger for it. And if you can recognize it for what it is, which is one of the greatest things ever, this too shall pass. And you can say this about the elation times and about the shit times. This too shall pass every time. It's not the end of your story. And so if you can keep that in mind now, the way that I look at it is I jump out ahead of it and I'll see these times, these tower moments as they refer to them in tarot, or these setbacks, if you want to look at it like that. And I'll see those as indicators that things are about to get really dope and I'm about to learn something and grow tremendously. And as long as I can, maintain this nonchalance through it, it's going to be more comfortable. But there's still growth involved, which involves you stepping into your discomfort zone. Now, if you want to view that as being pushed, it'll come with a certain energy, but you're still going to learn the lesson. If you want to view it as you stepping into it and more into your power, you're still going to learn the lesson. It's still going to be like ripping a Band-Aid off. It's still going to come with a little bit of discomfort because that's just the way that it works. Because to your point, suffering needs to occur, but I think suffering is subjective. Suffering is a choice, like Buddha says, right? You don't have to suffer through it. It might be uncomfortable, but recognizing its value will make the discomfort worth it, is just how I see it. And so if you can look at it that way, it really tremendously helps these times, and look at them as indicators. You know, there's many things, as above, so below. So there's many things in our world that will give you this as a clue. Always darkest before the dawn, you know. Any of those cliche kind of sort of deals are very, very important when it comes to the shit times in your life, because it's so important that you focus on that it's for a reason. You wanted it. It's going to tremendously change you for the better every time. It's not happening to you. It's happening for you. Right. And then if you could just kind of get through it but sit with it, you know, and don't judge yourself or whatever, you'll ease through those times. So you'll get through them, but they don't feel like hell anymore. You would have called them hell before, but that's just because you weren't strong enough. And now you are, you know.
Yes. So let me ask you this question. Let me throw you for a little bit of a curveball.
Oh.
What do you think spiritually and esoterically is happening with schizophrenics?
Again, I would answer this by saying, because, and you know me, Micah, man, my idea of this place is very fluid. I don't have it's round or flat. I don't have this is what we are and this is the way that it is. I'm a possibilian. So I look at this through a few different lenses. Now, if one were to say that we are more of like vessels here, right? And that our soul isn't this thing, and consciousness is just something that we're tapped into and animating us, but it's not something that's derived from us per se.
Right.
And let's say that this entire place, this earth, this realm, whatever, is just an environment in which we can interact and grow, like a school. And let's say to do that, you must inhabit a vehicle, or you must hop in a submarine, let's say. You want to view it like this. Our school is at the bottom of an ocean, or just in a different environment to where you physically can't go there unless you get in a vehicle and do so. So your spirit hops in a little vehicle called a body, and then it goes into this environment and learns all the things that it needs to do. And it's here to touch, smell, taste, see, and hear everything it can. I think it's way more fun and not as dire as a lot of people want you to believe that it is. And I think they want you to believe that for reasons of selfishness on their part, but that's, you know, we could talk about that if you'd like. But whenever I look at this as, like I said, this system, then perhaps people with schizophrenia, to your point, the system, maybe it's a very high vibe being. Maybe this is something that is struggling to fit in this vehicle because it's so powerful. It's so heavy. It knows it's tapped into something so incredible that to dial it down, to squeeze it into a human body and to allow it to function, what we would air quotes function, is a very challenging thing. And I think that not only is it misplaced elements of wisdom, because it's untapped absolute wisdom, and they're put off to the side and thrown in these places, whatever they are, and tortured for a reason. I think that they probably hold quite a bit of wisdom and knowledge, and they could probably even
Have you ever seen like mental hospital drawings from these people? They're outrageous.
Oh man, yes. Schizophrenic specifically, I've seen some like watercolor collection. I want to say that some psychologist came around and did just specifically watercolors, and then he went around and challenged them with different mediums, and even similar patients in different mediums would just crush it in anything that they tried, and it was like savant across the board. They'd be handing him instruments, all sorts of interesting things. So, like I said, I think that ADHD, I think all of these things that were misdiagnosed as mental disorders were really being suppressed next level humans.
Well, that's the thing with bipolar. It's hypomania, which is elation, thinking that you're God, thinking that you are. And I mean, I talk about what God is. So like thinking about like the definition that normal people or everyday people think God is. You know, you think you're God, or you're going to write a book series, or you're going to save the world. These are thoughts that enter your brain when you're bipolar. But also on the flip side is the depression. It's called bipolar for a reason, because you're usually either just happy or angry. You know, and it takes a lot to deal with those thoughts. But I've got a offbeat question that's been in my head for about 20 minutes now that I wanted to ask you. Okay. Do you think for yourself that the most interesting people you have ever encountered, or the people that make you think the deepest, are all self-taught, as opposed to going through the education system?
Man, you you are a listener. Yes, this has been something I've talked about so much, about these this idea of glorifying the discipline, and oh my God, they have this accolade, and oh my God, you have this piece of paper framed on your wall. All this is, and I always use the metaphor in the show about Apollo 13, that movie, not the actual psyop, the movie about the psyop. And so whenever they run in and they say, "Hey, some shit's fucked up on the thing. We gotta fix it, but you can only fix it with what's in this box." And they take a box of limited materials and dump it out on a table, and they say, "Okay, solve it with this. You can't go solve it with the three things over there that would absolutely fix this right now. You have to solve it with that." This is how I view education, medical, science for the most part, all scientism especially, all of the major disciplines that you are told are law are, I believe, bound to a certain set or a box of toys that they can play with. And I think that there's a lot of toys here that they don't have access to.
They become very regimented and sort of defend the system too. That becomes part of them.
Right? Dude, you have, yes. And again, to another point that I talked about quite a bit is this idea of tenure, and that you can't come out with new information, although it's game changing, life changing for everyone on this planet. Not one more person needs to suffer because of this one invention, but the guy who based his work on it, that did a lot of good stuff, and he, donated a lot of money, and he has a whole wing over here by the library. He's not dead yet. So we can't release this stuff yet because it would make this guy feel bad. And this is thing. I know, I've interviewed people in academics on the show. These PhD people will tell me, dude, I had game-changing research, but my professor, it goes against his book, and he sells a lot of textbooks on this thing, and he's a tenured professor, and it would really fuck up his job. And so they don't.
There was a really great article. I'll send it to you. It was on Substack. It was talking about the death of peer review. That's coming.
Okay. Awesome. Well, what it needs to be, and this is what it sucks about science is, like NASA, like any of these things, you get gaslit into what you're told that it is, and then you figure out what it really is. And it's just such a bummer. You're just like, damn it, and you see NASA faking what they fake, and then you just go, fuck, man, Saturn looks cool, and Cassini and all of that kind of stuff. You kind of lose your whimsy for, anything, like I said, of an authoritative measure that you've been told. Now, this empowers you to really sharpen your discernment, and I think that this is another method of that here. But it definitely feels like, with that in particular, that's what's going on, man. It's just a wild shell game, and then they gaslight you into saying that it's not what they're telling you that it is, and it's just right. It's for fools, and it's so easy to see, which is, I have my own thoughts about that, like why it's so obvious to some and not others, but right. It's still very, very interesting. I don't know.
Right. So it's basically, you just look at what Dave Zed is doing with like quantum physics and all his work that he's doing.
Oh boy.
We both know him incredibly well.
Oh yeah. Loved it.
Look what he's doing, and so basically self-taught is the way to go. And the reason is because there's no end to it. Whereas when you get your PhD, that's kind of like where you stop your thinking. And then you kind of have to work in that box of Apollo 13. Whereas if you're self-taught, then what I do, I teach for Santos Bonacci, and what I do is I do something called syncretism, which is basically a menagerie of a bunch of different studies that fit together like puzzle pieces. And that's what I basically do. And the problem with education in the United States, because they don't do this outside of the United States, in Europe it's very different, but the problem with education is that when you get a job, okay, you're doing one thing. When you're being educated and you're going to get education, you get good at one thing. In Europe, you could be a mechanic, you could be a welder, you could have a couple different trades, okay? But here, you're put in a box, that's what you do, and that's what you define yourself by. And of course, you're going to defend it because you probably paid a lot of money for it. You're not going to believe that people lied to you along the way with that. So what are your thoughts?
Dude, you nailed it with that. That's the one. It's a lot of ego. It's a lot of hubris. There's a lot of eating crow that comes along with waking up. And, as long as you can just know that we've all been lied to and we all got fooled, man, and that nobody thinks you're dumb. We may question your sanity or at least your authenticity if you get to these choice points. You see all the information. You're a logical human being, and you still say, out of the hubris of, because my ego is going to hurt, to move on into that. That's malicious intent against yourself, and that's You never break promises
you're
against
talking about
yourself.
cognitive dissonance.
Cognitive dissonance, indeed, my friend. And it just feels like that if that's the case and that's the route you'd like to take, and and this is really how I feel about this, man. I think that this entire damn place is where I'm at with it now, and this is fluid and changes all the time. Is sort of like a big ass Westworld. I just think it's a big game. I think it's a big Hogwarts. It's a school. There's a lot of really cool mysteries and amazing things here. But like you said with the autodidactics, getting through it and self-discovery, those folks, man, there's just something about those people, like you and me. There's something that shows that not only did we get over the fact that we've been lied to, we got over the fact that we felt dumb because we were lied to. We started doing some really shitty research, man, because waking up sucks. It's scary. It's, you look around, you see everybody's still asleep. It's very isolating.
But it's addicting. And once you wake up,
Jesus.
everybody, every single person, once you wake up, you don't turn that light off.
You can't. It's like unlearning something. It's like the word for chair in Spanish. Do you know the word for chair in Spanish?
No.
Okay, you're never going to forget it after this watch. Okay, so how I remember it is by association, okay? And this is the point, is you can't unlearn something you've learned in a way that rings a bell to where you can't forget it. So this is one of those things. So the word for chair in Spanish is silla, okay? Silla. Now, how I remember this is whenever I get up out of a chair that I've just been sitting in, you turn around to it to thank it, and you say, see ya.
See ya.
That's it.
There you go.
Chair in Spanish. You will never forget it. But this is one of those things, right? This is what we call one of those choice points. You are granted information, and you can either say, no, that's not true, and go look it up and say, oh, it is see ya, and then still remember it. Or you can say, no, that person didn't have that UFO experience, and that's so stupid, and why would you ever believe in that? And of course they're not spraying anything on us. Those are contrails. You guys are so dumb. And
right.
And that's fine, and you'll find an echo chamber of that, and that's okay. But I think that needs to exist for people like you and I to thrive, because we need to have adversity. We need to be the ones that are a smaller percentage of people and still stick to our convictions. I think that's part of the game. I think that means we're winning.
So my question to you now would be, I'm going to take a minute to think about it too. Where would you like to grow the most? Spiritually, mentally, at this point?
Mentally.
What would you like to work on?
Mentally. I'm in the mental zone. I can answer this immediately. Mentally, because I know it all happens right here. I have really gotten to the point to where everything is right there. I even created a tulpa that I call Thought Ninja. I have a shirt that I sat and made, and it's up on the store for sale. It's a Thought Ninja. It reads Thinking Ninja in Japanese. And his whole job is to concentrate on making sure he's the bouncer of my thoughts. And really, whenever I started to go within and I started to look at this mentally, that's when spiritually everything changed for me. That's when everything changed. So to answer your question, mental. If you have the option of anything external or we're beefing up your mental and growing in that department, that one is where I'm going to really focus the attention every single time, because I know that leads to everything else. There is no harmony, no balance, no anything if you've got chaos brewing up there, if you've got a battle going and you judge yourself constantly for things you can't control, and you feel out of control, and you just kind of fake your way through it. And it's this, no thanks. I did that for too damn long. And now it's like one of those learned things. Because I'm so cognizant of it, I can't go back. I can't unlearn it. It's like you look at the old you, like chair in Spanish, and say, see ya. And that's it. You move on, man, and you grow. So mentally is where I'm growing right now. Like I said, I've very much been concentrating on the way that my mind works.
You married?
I am, yes, sir.
Okay. Is your wife spiritually awake?
Yes, she's going through a pretty big one right now, and did last year. Always kind of open. I would say really kicked it into gear last year, and especially with me just going, okay, I'm quitting my job. I'm leaving this almost $100,000 a year job with insurance and a car and all of that stuff, and I'm just going to play podcaster, and we're just going to live off our savings until I can figure it out. And it's kind of like that was a bit of a tower moment for her, and a bit of a spiritual awakening. And, there's a lot of faith involved in that and trust. And the world gets rocked, and it's a mini 2020 with her. And I really do think that's what happened in 2020. It's kind of it shakes people up. It puts them on their heels. And that's what the facilitation of consciousness that was in my mind.
The one thing that I share with all my listeners, I call them supporters. I don't call them fans, because fan is short for fanatic. And I really hope I don't have any. I hope nobody miseries me.
I like that.
And so my supporters, what I share with them all the time is, you may start to be awake to some of the stuff that I talk about, to some of the stuff that Brandon talks about. You may be novice, you may be new, you may be deeply in it. Some of this stuff you might be like, I know this already, but I'm enjoying the conversation. Whatever level you're at, that's fine. But what you have to understand, and this is important to understand, is that every single person on earth has their own spiritual thing that they have to go through. So as much as you love your kids, your wife, your parents, your cousins, your friends, your loved ones, it doesn't matter, okay? Because you can love them to death and you could want to wake them up, but they have to do it at their own time. You cannot drag anybody through your awakening. It is for you alone. And when you realize that it is for you alone, you realize that there is no limitation on it, because you're not stuck explaining things that you learned 10 years ago to somebody and trying to bring them up to speed and constantly wasting your time. The ceiling is infinite. If you realize that your experience is your own experience and you're learning your own stuff, okay, you can hit the moon with it. Okay, that's what it basically is. That goes with, my astrotheology work. That goes with your podcast work. As your podcast grows, that goes with everything. So, if your loved ones are not on the same level as you, it's okay. Your responsibility is to love them. It is not to bring them to gnosis. Yeah. And that's what's really important.
Outstanding point. Yeah, that was one of the really hard ones. It took me a very long time, because that's the thing, right? We wake up and we go, holy shit. And we're not, we're not cold-hearted, man. We're the way we are because we have a huge heart, and because that's why we spend all the money and the time and the energy and effort and sacrificing time with our loved ones and stuff to bring people the information and to get people out of their box and to make them think. It's because we care. And it's really challenging to sit back and watch people just sleep and want to sleep, which is the other part. And that's the awareness you have to get to, is whenever, again, what makes it easier is to look at it again like a game. Like I had a wonderful guy named Pat Mahan on the show. He does an awesome show called Like Attracts Like. And one of the things that he said really stuck with me, which was a metaphor for the energies that are here, right? This dualistic place, these darkened lights, your Klaus-Schanel Schwabs and your us's, the darks and lights, the white hats, black hats, whatever. And what this really feels like more than anything is just a damn play. It's just it's a movie, and not in a reductive way, but in a it's going to be okay way, you know what I mean, kind of thing. So it's very real for us, and we've experienced it like that. But you need black hats here for the white hats to exist, because yes, back to what you said earlier, the way that we learn is through struggle and adversity, and you need something to be testing you and to provide adversity for you to grow. And this is how this works. The best way for Yeah, the best way, we grow plants and stuff. I mean, we do all kinds of stuff, but one of the microcosm metaphors for a plant is you need a fan if you're growing indoors. Plants need wind. They need struggle. They need to fight against something and resist so that they can fortify their roots to grow stronger. And you're no different. There's, again, microcosms of everything here. And so you can
there's a reason they plant the three sisters together.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, Native Americans. What is it? Beans, don't tell me. Beans, potatoes, and corn?
Corn and squash, I think.
Squash, that's right, because squash, it's such a broad leaf that it shades the roots. Yes, okay, you're right. And then the corn stalks provide the run for the beans, and then they provide nitrogen when they break down. Okay. It's these relationships that like I said are just really interesting, these dynamics here. And if you look at it like this, Pat Mahan's quote is that at the end of a play, the villain and the hero come out and bow together. They were in this together the whole time. And really, when you look at it like that, you can say, okay, then, if you also look at the psychology of anything, like attracts like. So the only reason bullies exist is because victims are out here. Now, then you ask yourself, okay, well, why do victims exist? Victims exist because they've been disempowered, because they don't know who they are. They don't know what they want. And they're led down a path that's unauthentic and convinces them that the only way that they can survive is to also be unauthentic, which is unnatural. It goes, everything that fits in goes against to survive, goes against what's in you naturally. And so again, when you look at it like this, you're just like, okay, well, some people don't want to wake up, man. And some people have to play the role of don't want to wake up here so that you, the white hat in the story, can facilitate the role you have, which is to learn to love exactly what you said.
Think about your own awakening. Think about your own awakening. If
Yes.
even these people were
Yes.
slightly receptive to the stuff that you're talking about, they would have the mental breakdown that you had. I mean, you have to go through that.
It's heavy. Yeah, the unity consciousness alone. I mean, your first psychedelic, when you see that, when you even contemplate the idea that everything is one and that you're just God's experiencing itself subjectively, it will blow you. You'll spend years just thinking about that alone. And you should, it should be that jarring. It should expand your reality that much. That's the point of it. It's because there's so many magical and amazing things here. And I feel that a lot of people just, and they're fine with it. And it's fine too, because they need to play that role. We need background characters. We need NPCs to walk around here and just kind of fill up space and just want to watch the game. And that's
I talk
fine.
about it. You know what I like to say, Brandon? I found out recently, or actually I've known this for a while, but I shared this recently. Something like 40 to 50% of people on the planet do not have an inner monologue.
Oh my God, I heard this. This tripped me out so much. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? Yeah, you don't hear things in your head like that. Yeah. And I heard though, because I heard it's more than that actually. I heard it's more like the herd, like 80%. Yeah, it's something like that. Sounds a little bit nicer. And I have a thought on this. Like, let's say that this is just a game, and let's say that it is just that, and that your mom's not going to wake up because her job, her role, the script she's reading off of says she can't, no matter how convincing you are.
Right.
She can't wake up because it's not her role. It's not her job. And these things, whatever they are, it's just you, right? But whatever you're interacting with here plays its role to a T. It does not deviate from it. It only gives you back what a mirror to you, the energy you're at is, including the people that you've known forever. And then, they give you the opportunity by trying to fit you into a box in which they knew you a long time ago, which your mom and family will do constantly. Oh, you're this. Oh, you don't like that food. Oh, you don't like this. And they'll do that even though you've grown, because they can't reconcile what's in front of them, right? This whole concept of that. And again, it's to fortify your resolve. I really do think it's just for you. It's for you to figure your shit out. So again, okay. So let's say that there are a bunch of people, air quotes, here, and that there's a bunch of bodies here at least that you interact with. And one of the fun things when you talk about NPCs, meaning that there are human beings walking around, or at least shells of people walking around that aren't.
So explain where the NPC term came from for my listeners. It's a gamer's term, but just explain it real quick.
Yeah, I kind of hopped into it. Good call. I like the context. So NPC stands for non-playable character. And what it refers to is in a game, like let's say World of Warcraft or something like that, there are a bunch of just characters and people walking around there. Because if it was everybody that was just playing the game, there might be like 5 people. And it's an expansive world. So you got to, populate the area. And so then you have things walking around, and it gives you this sense that, number one, you're not alone. Number two, that it's an environment, that it's populated, that it's alive, right? And so let's say that that's a microcosm of what's here on our planet. Maybe that's what this place is. It's a simulated reality. It doesn't have to be cold and mechanical like the Matrix or anything, but it could be more of an organic matrix, which could still have all the spiritualism and the whimsy and all that, and still be, facilitating the lessons that we're talking about here. It doesn't have to be cold, is what I just want to make sure that everybody realizes. But the metaphor of an NPC or a non-playable character still applies to both models. So let's say that there are a bunch of people or characters here just so that you don't feel alone, and so that you have things to interact with and grow through. And there are main characters in your life, and those. But then also there are a shitload of background people. And let's say that it's 80%. And let's say that those 80% are always tapped into or turned on to the same radio frequency that tells them that daddy government always knows what's right, to watch the game, to not question, to obey, to consume, and all of that.
Drink the beer, to do
drink. You nailed it. Yeah, pop the pill. Yeah. And that's the program running. And so it gives you the option of falling into that because that's the program running, right? But again, once you put the glasses on, you can't take that off. You can't unsee it.
Right.
So if you look at it this way, how I've been playing with the idea of NPCs or all these characters, a fun thing to think about that on that, by the way, is just to ask yourself the question. If you're like, no, everybody's real and all of that, ask yourself the question, when is the last time you saw your neighbor bring their groceries in? And that's always a great one, because usually not a lot of people, or maybe it's a main character in your life, which is a neighbor technically.
You're basically talking about the Truman Show.
Yes, absolutely, the Truman Show, but even more woo-woo than that, that the physical bodies here don't have drivers. They're automated. They're driverless cars. But perhaps, just like us, inhabiting one of these cars, maybe this time period is sort of like a floodgates. It's sort of like a Adult Swim or of some kind on the other side, or whatever's animating us, let's say, gets to flood this place and fill the driverless cars with actual souls who are here to hold light or to expand consciousness. And maybe it's going to be this flood, and perhaps this is why you're seeing your aunt, ask you about Melchizedek and sacred geometry and shit when she, is just smoked 4 packs of Pall Malls a day and played bingo and never wanted anything to do with any of this stuff. And now she's having some sort of awakening and asking you about mushrooms and where you can get them and shit.
Yeah.
You're seeing a lot of people, air quotes, switch on. Now, what's even crazier than that is I've talked to people who say, I don't remember my life before 2 years ago. I don't remember any of it. I don't know who this man is that I'm married to. I don't know who these people are that they call my kids, because that's when they had their spiritual awakening. Now, if you think about this, then it's kind of like, well, they were inhabited by a soul. The soul just said, yeah, I'll take that car over there. I'll hop in that bumper car and then I'll be in the game. And now I'm in the game at this crucial time. And, now all this dope shit's going on and now I'm here. And I'll assume that family role and all of that kind of stuff. So there's this really interesting sort of amnesia of who they were before, which is also very interesting because this is, like I said, more to the idea that you perhaps are just a receiver of consciousness, like we talk about. Even Tesla said he's a receiver. And so if you look at it like this, you're basically just like a meat bumper car that you're driving around in an environment.
How I like to put it? I like to put it like this. I like to say, I'm not a mathematician. Okay? So I can't see things in calculus or mathematic terms. I can only think, unless I get a download out of absolutely nowhere, which we call an enlightenment moment. Okay, for the most part, I am stuck thinking in what I have compiled as information into my brain as to this point.
Right.
You cannot think beyond that. Right? So you cannot think beyond that. We are a compilation. I tell people we are only our actions and our intentions. And what I try to help people understand is that we are not our thoughts. We are not our thoughts. Okay. Now, what the religious do, what the Bible says, is that in the New Testament, it says that if you're a man and you have a negative a thought about a pretty woman, and you're married, you've committed adultery and you're a sinner. Okay, that's not how it is. If it's just a thought, if I have an idea for a book, right? I've written 9 so far. If I have an idea for a book, but I never materialize it into the computer, it's just a thought, and it's no purpose. In the sense you have to manifest your thoughts. Okay, the fact that there's a swath of people out there that can't, that don't have an inner monologue, frightens me.
Well, I mean, it may lend to the idea that we're talking about here. Maybe they're just bags, man. Maybe they're just on autopilot. Maybe this place is so much more technical than we really think that it is. And we didn't go through the 90s and boob tube TVs, and we just went through a simulation of something that said that that's all the technology that was there. But obviously, we see ships flying around that have greater than that. So obviously, it's in the space, it's in the universe, it's law of one. If it's out there, you can have it too, kind of a thing. And so there are things that occur here. And, this kind of, again, back to the contact thing, this is kind of what we'll look at about them as well. They're just sort of employees here. And maybe that's what the entire phenomena is, sort of like a massive Truman Show. And it could just shapeshift and be whatever you need it to be to make the point of whatever experience you signed up to have on the other side, whatever that looks like, whatever abduction. If you, said, all right, I want 5 Bigfoot encounters by the time I'm 40, you know what I mean? Then they're like, all right, we got to get to it. And then
what are your thoughts on the thought that we pick our parents, we pick our scenario in life before we come here?
Again, it depends on your worldview. I think that if it's an option of reincarnation and that you're here to learn lessons and that everybody's sort of in on it. Now, if you look at it as, again, the highest level, the lowest common denominator, it's all you anyway. So you picked this personality type with these experiences, with this other personality type with these experiences, that an infinite number of those go backwards, and then you combine them. It's sort of just like a game, like genetics, like you're just playing God, literally, but it's with the entities themselves being able to do it themselves. And it just produces this other entity with this combination of traits that in this environment that's mathematically correlated has this sort of set of options that it can partake, and let's see what it does. And then they hit go, and then you're born, and then you go. Now, again, to another point of this is that perhaps you choose the experience of the avatar at any given time because it's already happened. And therefore, you could say that there's no time on the other side. So therefore, basically, like the life you're living now is just the equivalent of you walking over to your old VHS tapes and pulling Pootie Tang and putting it in your VHS and hitting play. It's one of your favorite movies, so you're just going to sit and chill and watch it. Maybe the Micah Dank ride, the Micah Dank experience is one of your favorites. And so you consciously come down and you hop in this. But to say that we choose it, meaning that it hasn't happened yet, is one way to look at it. And if that's the case, then yeah, that's an option. But if we look at it from like again, another option of that time doesn't exist on the other side, that everything's already happened, then these would just be all memories that are being replayed for your expansion of consciousness. So you live every life. So if you've been shit to someone, you've been shit to yourself. This is kind of what the unity consciousness thing. Yeah, it's all about. You've got it. Yeah, do unto others.
That's
right?
what the Quran says. The Quran 532. The Quran says it. Quran 532 says, for those of you who are the children of Israel who would kill somebody who hasn't committed manslaughter or another action, I'm paraphrasing this, who hasn't committed manslaughter or another action, if you kill someone, it's as if you killed all mankind. Whereas if you save someone, it's as if you've saved all mankind.
Yeah, that's exactly
what
right.
I try to do with my work, Brandon, honestly, is all these ancient holy texts are so loaded with wisdom, but the problem is they all spoke metaphorically. I'm actually trying to explain it in all my work.
What you do badass work. You do such great work. I don't know if you saw, your episodes are always some of the highest playing, man. So, you do phenomenal work, and we all love what you have to say. And you do it great because, yes, they are unapproachable, because it's like reading Shakespeare or something, like with a bunch of the ye olds and shit. Like we need somebody to kind of give us the cliff notes on it. Tell me get me through the ye olds, because you've read all that shit and you can deal with it. I just can't, for the most part, like you do with it. And then give us, your interpretation and breakdown on it, because you have such an insightful way of researching. So it's not coming at it from a place of malice, intent, or anything like that. You actually put forth the information. You're like, okay, well, here's now also what I found with it. And again, this is about you being an autodidactic, self-taught, because you can come at things from other disciplines in ways that are so creative that you would not have been allowed or untap that access, that information, had you have been in a discipline that told you couldn't do that. Quick thing.
You know what the system does, Brandon? The system. So when I started this, and I started going on, my first podcast was Rex Bear with Leak Project. And my friend John emailed him for months to get me on. And then finally he did, and we hit it off, and it's been gold ever since.
But I love Rex. I was on there like a month ago. I love that dude.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Yeah.
When I started off, and you tell people that, hey, I have an old but brand new way to interpret the Bible, the second you say that, people look at you like you're insane.
Yeah.
And then when I start to grow a following on my YouTube channel or my podcast appearances, or just in general, it's like the thought creeps into my mind from time to time. I'm like, just be sure you're not starting a cult. I always ask everybody, I'm like, listen, guys, does this make sense? Please leave comments. Does this work make sense? Because I need to be reinforced, because I am not Jim Jones.
Well,
I'm not.
You're not. It's not going to turn into a cult. I mean, if anything, like Christianity, what you're clearing up is a cult. You're kind of the cult cleaner. You're the cult crusher, to be honest with you, because these organized religions that have based their fear-based teachings on how to control people rather than liberate them is what you're pointing the light on. And so really, again, if that's a cult, then I'll sign up for your cult, dude. It sounds dope as shit. Let's do it.
So I got one last
anything
question.
You hand me, though.
I got one last question. Brandon, this was amazing. I want to get you back on another month, because I could just talk to you for hours.
Any damn time. Yeah, we barely touched anything. This was great. You're a wonderful interviewer, too. You're an awesome host.
One last question, since you were talking hallucinogens. What do you think of something like 5-MeO toad that completely obliterates your reality? Do you think there's a benefit to that?
Yes, absolutely. I think that's the whole point of my show, actually.
I'm an idiot. Can you explain to people what I just said real quick, what 5-MeO is?
That's okay. 5-MeO DMT is in damn near everything. It's in you. It's what's released when you die. And this is where the controversy between that you're having a psychedelic experience or a near-death experience come in, because honestly, it's very hard to tell. So because so much DMT gets released in you, but you can have access to that state, which is, again, why DMT, people say they felt like they were dying. And on some psychedelic experiences, you know what? Yeah, I mean, you could use this metaphorically and literally. Maybe you're dying. Maybe you are dying physically in this world, and you quantum jump into a reality to where there's no dash in between kit and cat now, but you have great awarenesses. And perhaps this is what the Mandela effect is, maybe. But
Right.
these idea of DMT and, shattering your reality, I think is very beneficial. You need your reality shattered. That was the biggest takeaway I got from my first psychedelic experience. Was where when the things in my reality that were rigid and solid, like a flagpole or the road or a wall, were waving and undulating and melting into one another. It's when I saw that I was like, okay, this place is not what I've been told. There's so much more to this place. And that's what really kicked off everything, was because I saw it was so shocking to see it so different that it just sends you on this, yeah, I have to figure this out. Yeah, absolutely.
Beautiful. And the one I was talking about, toad, it's a poisonous toad. And what you do is you scrape off the slime off of the frog.
You scare
Beavis
it,
and
yeah.
Butthead did this. I don't know how they got away with it in the 90s.
Yeah,
Do you remember that episode?
Yeah, you scare it, and and then it secretes I didn't go over the frog. Yeah, and then it secretes this ooze, and basically they stretch it out on sticks, and then they scrape it. And whenever they scrape it, they put it in, and then there's different ways of administering this. You could do Cambo as well, but they'll usually dry that out and smoke it. So that's a great way to do it. Ayahuasca is DMT, but it's produced differently. It's just a different way of going about it, but similar sorts of effects, still reality shattering. And then you'll have like Cambo or something like that, to where they do the same process on the frog. But what they'll do is that they'll take with the little spit of the shaman as well, they'll put it into a certain consistency and then burn your arm and then put it in there with a stick. And so and you'll see people with like these rows of burned little dots on their arm. And it's a way of, it purges you of toxins. It's a mild hallucinogen, but God, it just flushes your body out of all the nonsense, because the poison grabs onto everything in you and just purges everything. So, it's intense, you know what I mean? And that's what they say about psychedelics. Again, it's not for everybody. I really don't think so. I think if you get to a certain level of hells that you've gone through, a good psychedelic experience would be a wonderful way to kind of clear the slate, because Michael Pollan had the greatest way of talking about psychedelics on your psyche and why they're beneficial. You can picture like a snowy hill, and as you sled down that hill, you create tracks, and those tracks over time you get really deep, and that's where you go. Like, even if you try to go just off to the side, your sled will dip in there and naturally fall into those grooves, and that'll be the path that you take down that side of the hill. What psychedelics allow is the opportunity for snow to cover the hill and for you to freshly lay new neurons and new pathways. And that's why it's so beneficial, because again, it gets you into this hypersensitivity. We could do a whole thing on psychedelics, man. It's amazing. But yes,
yeah,
I think
next time
shattering.
You come on, we didn't get a chance to do it, but next time you come on, we'll start talking about microdosing and things of that nature.
Yeah. And I've got my own thoughts on that. I've participated into it. I'm not that. Honestly, I don't regularly do psychedelics. I did a lot, but now I don't. I don't feel that. Not that I don't need them, because and I'm an advocate for taking them recreationally. Like, if you don't do that with ayahuasca, like, you're welcome to try, but it won't be that way. But stuff like mushrooms, dude, if you want to take a few mushrooms and just go sit around in a field and just enjoy how awesome life is and giggle your ass off, I think that there's so much benefit to that. It doesn't always have to be this deep spiritual journey, because even in the little things, even the taking them just to get fucked up and have fun and go walk around in the woods, there's the equivalent amount of spiritual journey and energy and information and awareness wrapped into that, even though it's not like serious, you know what I mean? So it's still beneficial.
The funny thing is that Dave is my favorite band, right?
Mm-hmm.
But whenever I take an edible and I put on like the old stuff with Boyd and the violin, I'm just transported, man.
Yes. Yeah. Music will do it, man. And we could do a whole thing on music, cymatics. Like I said, I was a musician for a long time. I know a lot about the switch between the 440 and 332, 432 and 440. Yeah.
Yeah, we got all right. So
we got a lot.
Couple topics for next time, but Brandon, man, tell us.
This is awesome.
Everyone where to find you, man. You guys, listen to his shit, please. Okay, he's literally in my top 5.
Oh, dude, so grateful, dude. Thank you so much. I'm truly honored. And you're a phenomenal host, man. This was a great conversation, dude. I knew it would be because just talking to you it's just like a hang anyhow. But to answer your question specifically, expandingrealitypodcast.com. That's the central hub for everything. There's a lot of stuff changing. Especially look forward to end of January. A lot of stuff changing. So expandingrealitypodcast.com. We're played on anywhere your podcasts are served: YouTube, Rockfan, Odyssey. All that good stuff. So you guys check it out. It's a cool show. We have fun.
Yeah, Brandon's awesome, man. So, dude, we'll talk behind the scenes about like the next show. We'll put a couple ideas together.
Yeah, perfect. I'm looking forward to it, man. I can't wait.
Brandon, man, thank you, bud. This is gonna go up tomorrow, okay?
Cool. Thank you. And thank all of you for listening. And come on over to Expanding Reality and check it out. Mike has been over there twice. Just go listen to both of his episodes.
I know my topics are very eclectic, so I'm all over the place. But Brandon, although his topics are eclectic too, they're a lot like what we're talking about here.
Oh,
There's a lot of those. And I don't often do this, but when I do this, you got to do it with Brandon Thomas. Thanks,
so
bud.
Grateful. Thank you.